Hi Guy, welcome back TV Spoilers. The war between Sally and Billy is reaching its most explosive stage. And what makes it terrifying isn't simply that they disagree, it's that both of them truly believe they're saving the other one in the most ruthless way possible. In the coming Y and R spoilers, this conflict is no longer a normal clash between two people who once understood each other better than anyone else. It becomes a battle over control, pride, and the poison of revenge that has been quietly eating Billy alive from the inside. Sally stands on one side, fighting to hold him back before he falls into the same darkness again. Billy stands on the other, charging forward like if he slows down for even 1 second, the past will swallow him whole. Sally Spectre doesn't approach this situation gently. She has run out of patience for soft suggestions and careful warnings. Because she has watched Billy convince himself too many times that he's doing the right thing, only to end up paying for it with another personal collapse. This time, Sally chooses a harder line, even if it means stepping into territory Billy guards like a fortress. And that is exactly what ignites him. It isn't because he hates Sally, but because she touches the most fragile part of him, part that cannot stand being treated like a man who can't control his own life. Billy has always carried the insecurity of feeling like a failure in the eyes of powerhouses like Victor, a man pushed into reacting instead of leading. So when Sally pushes too far, Billy hears it as an insult aimed directly at his pride. His anger isn't just emotional, it's survival instinct, because being controlled has always been his greatest humiliation. Everything escalates even further when this confrontation happens on Kane's train. The closed space, the constant motion, the feeling that there's no escape and no delay, makes the pressure rise with every breath. Sally doesn't come there to ask questions politely. She comes to stop a deal she believes will be the first domino in a chain of disasters. In Sally's eyes, Kane is offering Billy a ticket straight back into his worst obsession: power, domination, and revenge. She looks at Billy and doesn't see a man chasing his dream. She sees a man running from pain by clinging to victory. Sally had hoped Billy had truly moved on from his need to retaliate. There were moments when she believed he had changed, moments when he looked like the best version of himself, more controlled, more grounded. But then a new opportunity appeared, and everything snapped back into place. Sally begins to realize something chilling. Billy doesn't actually crave peace. Billy craves proof. He wants the world, especially the people who underestimated him, to see him differently. And in that hunger, Sally feels a door closing. If Billy walks through it, he may never return, or he might return as someone she no longer recognizes. That fear becomes real when Kane presents an offer that instantly raises the stakes beyond anything Sally can solve with a simple argument. Kane offers Billy the chance to take over the headmaster position with no conditions attached. A gift that is too large, too easy, and therefore too dangerous. To Billy, this isn't just a title. It's a symbol he can hold up in front of everyone as evidence that he is no longer the man shoved out of the game. It means he's back and not at the edges, but at the center of power. Kane places the opportunity in Billy's hands as if it is something Billy has deserved all along. And Billy wants it so badly that it borders on hunger. Sally notices the change in Billy the second he hears it. She sees the spark in his eyes shift into calculation, and then into something far worse, the stubborn certainty of a man convinced that this time he will win in the right way. Sally makes her position clear. She refuses to support this deal. She warns that she won't be okay if Billy agrees to move forward. She pushes hard because she is terrified. But deep down, she understands she is playing a risky game because the more she pulls Billy back, the more she triggers his instinct to resist. Billy cannot tolerate being controlled, and Sally is beginning to look like the person trying to command him. Billy answers her with a coldness that leaves Sally shaken. He doesn't need to explain himself. His message is simple. He will do what he wants. Billy's entire life has been shaped by people trying to steer him, limit him, or manipulate him, and he has promised himself he will never allow that again. Not even from Sally, the one person he once trusted most. Billy doesn't call this revenge. He calls it taking back what belongs to him. But Sally recognizes the lie beneath it. She knows Billy is hypnotizing himself into thinking this is a positive step, when it is really just a polished version of his obsession. What's even more dangerous is that Billy may not stop at saying yes. Once Billy reaches this mindset, he is not a man who knows where to draw the line. He begins to see everything as a negotiation for power, a bigger game. And that is where dreams become weapons. Billy might push Kane again, forcing him to expand the arrangement so Billy doesn't just receive the position, but gains real leverage and authority. Billy's thoughts are no longer about whether he should do this. His thoughts are about how much more he can take. Because beyond the headmaster deal, Billy is already chasing another goal even darker and far more rooted in retaliation: Newman Media. To Billy, Newman Media isn't just a company. It is a symbol of Victor and Adam, the system that has always made Billy feel excluded and smaller than he deserves. Billy wants to attack that symbol directly. He wants to merge Newman Media into Abbott Communications, turning it into fuel for the venture he's trying to build. From the outside, it could sound strategic. But Sally knows the truth. The strategy is being driven by resentment, not vision. Sally becomes trapped inside an impossible contradiction. If she lets Billy go, she may be forced to watch him become his most dangerous self, cold, aggressive, ruthless toward anyone who stands in his way. But if she tries to stop him, she becomes the enemy in his eyes, the woman ruining the chance of a lifetime. Sally doesn't want to lose Billy. But she also doesn't want to stand beside a man who is slowly turning into the very type of monster he claims to hate. She looks at him and realizes she may have underestimated the depth of the wound inside him. Billy doesn't just want success. Billy wants to return pain to the people who once made him feel powerless. And when a man's goal stops being creation and becomes destruction disguised as victory, anyone who loves him becomes collateral damage. Sally's shock isn't because Billy has ambition. It's because Billy is willing to let ambition consume everything good he still has left. Sally once believed their love, their future, and the trust they had rebuilt would be enough to make Billy choose a better road. But now she sees he decided long ago, and she is just an obstacle he needs to overcome. Billy is about to make choices that will devastate Sally, not because they are entirely wrong on paper, but because they betray the promise Billy once made, that he would never let darkness control his life again. That is why Sally shifts tactics. She realizes arguing with Billy now will only make him more determined. If she wants to stop this, she has to strike at the source. She has to confront Kane. Sally approaches Kane with sharp, unforgiving intensity. She criticizes him brutally, not out of petty hatred, but because she believes Kane is exploiting Billy's open wound for his own gain. Sally sees a man offering no conditions, something that almost never exists in the real world. Kane's generosity feels less like kindness and more like bait wrapped in velvet. Sally wants Kane to admit his real motive. She wants him to back off before Billy walks straight into a deal that will rewrite everything. But as Sally confronts Kane, a more frightening truth starts to form in her mind. This situation might be far worse than she ever imagined. Billy may not be the only one being used here. Billy might be choosing to become Kane's most dangerous ally, because both men need each other to bring down bigger names. That possibility hits Sally like a sudden drop in the floor. It feels like she's watching two train tracks merge into a collision that cannot be avoided. And in that collision, the first thing crushed will be her relationship with Billy. The next could be Billy's reputation, his stability, and the last remaining moral boundaries he has been clinging to. Sally stands in the eye of the storm, furious and desperate at the same time. She's furious at Billy for being stubborn, for refusing to believe she's trying to protect him. She's furious at Kane for offering temptation at the worst possible moment. But most of all, She's furious at herself for still loving Billy enough to feel the pain like a physical injury as she watches him slip again. Billy stands on the opposite side of the battlefield, carrying the fire of a man who believes he is finally taking control of his destiny, that he will finally win, and that Sally will understand someday. He doesn't realize he is losing her. He only sees her as resistance. And then the most dangerous moment approaches, Billy's decision. Sally might try one last time to pull him back, but she also knows it could push him away forever. Billy stands in front of Kane, staring at an offer with no conditions, at the future of power and the larger plan involving Newman Media. And his eyes no longer belong to a man who is thinking carefully. His eyes belong to a man who has already chosen. The real hook isn't whether Billy says yes or no. The hook is what Sally is about to realize the second he makes his move. If Billy accepts, everything won't just change in the way she fears it will change in a way she never saw coming. In a way that will force Sally to choose between saving Billy by betraying him, or standing beside him and becoming part of the war he is about to unleash, a war that could swallow both Abbott Communications and Newman Media in a power battle with no way back. Sally didn't come to Kane's private train like someone stopping by for a calm conversation. She came like a storm that had been building inside her for days, as if her instincts had been screaming for too long and she could no longer ignore them. The moment she pushed into Kane's office and the door closed behind her, the air changed. There was no comfort of polite small talk, no softness of social manners, only the pressure of two people standing on opposite sides of the same power game. Sally looked at Kane with the eyes of someone who had learned how to read what people hide behind their smiles, while Kane watched her with a calmness that felt almost deliberate, as if he had been waiting for this moment and wasn't surprised at all. Kane held his position without flinching. He framed Chancellor as a peace offering, a gesture of reconciliation, something that should be appreciated instead of questioned. In Kane's version of the story, giving Billy this opportunity was an act of generosity, even a way to heal old wounds, as if the past could be erased with a signature. Kane didn't raise his voice, didn't show anger, because he had something far more effective than aggression, the quiet power of someone who believed he was the one handing out blessings. And in the way he presented it, Sally was pushed into the exact psychological trap Kane wanted to create. If she resisted, she would look ungrateful, like the woman who ruined her boyfriend's future, the one who couldn't recognize a gift when it was placed in front of them. But Sally couldn't swallow that explanation. The more Kane spoke about reconciliation, opportunity, and a deal with no strings attached, the more she felt the thick fog of a hidden agenda pressing down around her. Because in Sally's world, the free gifts are usually the most expensive. Kane could wear the mask of generosity, but Sally saw something colder underneath: calculation, control, and the skill of knowing exactly what Billy needed to hear. Kane didn't have to force Billy into anything. He only had to guide him, speak the right words, and let Billy walk forward on his own. Sally began to suspect this wasn't simply an offer to become headmaster. It felt like a hook, something polished with ambition and power, but hiding a sharp edge underneath, ready to pull Billy into a place he wouldn't be able to crawl out of. Sally looked at Kane and felt like she was staring at a man who could turn kindness into manipulation without showing a crack in his expression. That realization only sharpened her fear, because she understood that if she didn't shatter this illusion quickly, Billy would be the first one to pay the price. In Sally's mind, the consequences lined up like dominoes already tipping forward. Billy might believe this was the professional breakthrough he had been waiting for, the moment he could finally prove himself after too many failures and doubts. But Sally knew Victor would never let Billy walk away clean. Victor was not the kind of man who stood still while someone took a piece of territory he believed belonged under his control. And he was certainly not the type to forgive anyone bold enough to challenge his authority. Sally didn't need Victor to threaten anyone directly. Just imagining the look in his eyes once he heard Billy was finalizing a major deal with Kane was enough to make her blood run cold. That was why she was terrified, not only because Kane might be setting a trap, but because Billy might be stepping straight into a war he didn't fully understand. The more Sally pressed Kane, the more she realized she couldn't just warn him softly. She had to apply pressure, openly, without hesitation. She wanted Kane to withdraw the offer. She wanted him to stop before the damage became irreversible. Sally didn't care how Kane reacted or what he thought of her. What mattered was that Billy was being targeted, and if Kane was building something bigger behind the scenes, then the first step was making Billy believe he was in control. Sally could feel how carefully the illusion had been constructed, and she hated how easily it could swallow the person she loved. But Sally's fear didn't remain focused on Kane alone. A deeper pain began to surfacely started to suspect Billy, too. Not because she believed he was betraying her, but because she could feel that he had hidden something. Billy hadn't been honest about the details, about the secret meeting, about how quickly the deal was moving. And when a man starts acting like he must keep things quiet for his own good, Sally couldn't ignore what that meant. Billy was pushing her out of the most important part of his life, and that silence became its own kind of betrayal. It didn't just worry her, it haunted her. That unease pushed Sally toward a decision she never wanted to make. She began watching, tracking, searching for the truth. Not out of curiosity, but out of survival, out of the sharp instinct that if she didn't act fast, she would lose everything. And then she discovered a time and location of Billy's secret meeting with Kane on Kane's private luxury train. The second Sally realized Billy was walking into that space, she stopped wondering and started knowing. This wasn't random. This wasn't harmless. This was staged, designed, and dangerously controlled. On that train, everything was built to make risk feel invisible. The luxury, the privacy, the separation from the outside world, all of it created the illusion that nothing beyond those walls could touch them. Billy stepped into the situation like a man standing at the edge of a dream finally turning real. He was ready to sign an agreement that even he knew carried risk, but he believed the reward would outweigh everything. And Kane was there not as an equal partner, but as the narrator of the moment, shaping the reality with perfectly chosen words. Kane didn't need to lie completely. He only needed to tell half the truth, then let Billy fill in the rest with desire. Just as Billy prepared to put pen to paper, Sally appeared like a sudden crash that shattered the carefully constructed calm. Her presence didn't just shock Kane, it froze Billy, dragged him out of the trance of ambition at the exact second he believed he was about to win. Sally didn't come to speak gently. She came to cut the cord. She stepped into the room like she no longer cared if she would be hated, misunderstood, or emotionally destroyed. All she knew was that if Billy signed, she would never forgive herself. Sally exposed what she saw in that agreement. She pointed to the dangers Billy had been ignoring, the clauses that might look harmless now, but could become chains later. To her, this wasn't just paperwork. It was a trap that would tighten at the moment Billy felt most free. Sally forced Kane's manipulation into the open right in front of Billy, cracking the mask of generosity Kane had been wearing. And Billy's shock didn't come only from Sally's accusations. It came from the fact that she had gone this far to uncover the truth, which meant she no longer trusted him completely, and that realization hit him harder than he expected. Sally warned Billy about recklessness. She emphasized the consequences that could destroy his career if he made the wrong move. But underneath her words was something even darker, something no contract could explain: retaliation, power wars, invisible hands closing in once Billy crossed the line. Sally didn't need to name every enemy. Her urgency alone carried the message. She was seeing a future Billy refused to look at. Billy stood between them, between Kane and Sally, between ambition and love, and he couldn't pretend he didn't understand. The truth struck him in a way that forced him to slow down. He stared at the contract, then at Kane, then at Sally, and something inside him shifted. He began doubting Kane's motives, but he also began doubting himself. Was he being played? Was he too desperate to prove he mattered, so desperate that he had ignored the obvious risks? Was this dream truly his, or was it a mirror Kane had placed in front of him, reflecting exactly what Billy wanted to see? Kane's anger simmered beneath the surface. His plan had been disrupted in a way he hadn't expected because Sally refused to be shamed into gratitude. But Kane didn't explode. He went colder. And that shift was almost worse because Sally knew men like Kane didn't need to win today. They only needed to remember. Once someone like Kane remembers, the danger doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. Sally's interference pushed her relationship with Billy into a turning point they could no longer avoid. Billy couldn't deny that Sally might have saved him from a decision he would later regret. But he also couldn't deny the humiliation of being stopped right at the edge of what he believed was his moment. Sally couldn't regret acting on what she believed was right, but she could feel a crack opening between them, crack formed by Billy's secrecy and Sally's need to investigate the man she loved. They looked at each other, not as two people standing inside the same trust anymore, but as two people separated by a question burning quietly under the surface. Is love strong enough when power and ambition start pulling someone in the opposite direction? Outside, the train kept moving, as if nothing had happened. The world beyond those windows remained distant and untouchable. But inside, everything had changed. Kane would not forget this. Billy would not be able to return to the moment before Sally walked in. And Sally, she could no longer be sure whether she had truly saved Billy, or whether she had only pushed him closer to an even more extreme decision because Billy had never tolerated being blocked without reacting. Maybe the most frightening part wasn't whether Billy signed the deal or not, but that from this moment forward, every choice he made would carry a longer shadow. Heavier than before, and Sally found herself wondering whether she was fighting to keep Billy from falling or simply delaying a collapse she still didn't fully understand. One that might not even fall in the direction she was expecting. On our TV Spoilers channel, I always seek content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in The Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting perspectives. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about The Young and the Restless series.